Hey guys, my name is Brandon and welcome to or welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you like what you see in here, you're more than welcome to hit the subscribe button so you stay notified every time I upload a new video. Okay, let's get straight on with today's video. Hey everyone and welcome back to Is That More Brandon. So in today's episode I'm going to be doing a review for the 5th episode of I'm a Celebrity 2024. So, at the beginning of the episode, Dean said that he felt like he was paid to be a morning person. And obviously he is up getting everyone's day started as a radio presenter, so you know that's the only reason he enjoys getting up in the morning, because he knows he's getting money for it, which is obviously quite, you know, ironic. He also told some of the campmates that he smuggled tea bags in, so obviously they were able to make hot water. Again, it's one of those things, you've just broadcasted that all over live television and the producers are not stupid, so they're obviously going to kind of find you for that. But I like the hustle. I like the way that he was able to, you know, sneak 4 tea bags in to kind of have hot water as opposed to, you know, just plain water really. And Alan basically just said, oh, it's just a bit of mud in the kettle, like, you know, a wink wink, like we're not having anything weird, it's just water with a bit of dirt. And then yeah, Dean obviously went over to his trial, so put the teabag situation to the side. He obviously went to his zone, and Antoinette basically explained to him that there were 2 stars that he could win in the experimentation area, and there were 8 stars that he could win in the containment areas, with obviously some surprises. He basically said he'd want to try and get at least 1 star, saying that he wanted to try and under-promise and over-deliver. And obviously going through each of the containments. So in the first one, he had to put his tongue in, well, actually, yeah, he had to put his tongue to like twirl the star and then use his mouth to like grab the star and move it across the box. He was filled in that box with cockroaches, crickets and mealworms. In the second box, he had to move out of the rack a star. So a star was somewhere and he had to just get it from where it was into some box, and he was again covered with lizards. Containment number 3 was again tongue and mouth, and he was obviously joined by some snakes, one of which again sat on his head, but again he managed to not do that. Containment number 4, again moving the star out of the rack, so kind of like spinning it off of the thing. He was joined by spiders. And then in the 5th one, containment number 5, he again had to move the star out of the rack, but he was covered in fish guts. And literally within 2 seconds, he called, I'm a Celebrity, to get me out of here. So I think it was just the fact that it was so heavy, wet and squelchy on his neck. You kind of don't really know what it is. Like, it could be, you know, an animal, but it could also just be not nice. He was like, yeah, it's not, it wasn't great. And yeah, I think he basically was just like, oh yeah, you know, the actual animals and insects and stuff. He didn't even realise what he was in the box with. He was kind of looking, being like, is it literally fish guts is the thing that made me like quit the game? Like, I was in the box with spiders and cockroaches and the rest of it, but it was the fish guts that turned him off. And yeah, he basically got 4 out of 10 stars and said, is it bad that I'm okay with that? I guess it's kind of halfway, and he did only kind of anticipate for him to get like 1 or 2. So I don't think that was too bad. And then obviously when he came back, Dean basically said it felt like a bit of a spa day for Dean. So they were like massaging his head, giving him a bubble bath. And again, we found out that the next trial was going to be called the High Street of Horrors. Again, another 2 celebrities were going to be taking part in that. Colleen spoke to OT. Obviously Wayne had struggled with the fame, obviously being a young footballer and, you know, having made mistakes, and the 2 of them, I think, in a couple or relationship or whatever while they were still at school is a little bit difficult. And OT said to her that obviously he had to learn how to be resilient at such a young age, especially being a young boy as well. I think Grace joined the conversation here. I think she was just having a conversation with Colleen actually, and Colleen basically said to her that Wayne Rooney likes to write her poetry, with Grace basically saying, well, I wouldn't assume someone like Wayne Rooney, footballer, is going to write someone like his wife poems. I didn't really see that on my bingo. And he said that he's written, and she basically said that he's written cards for her over the years, with notes and poems and, you know, just like nice little phrases and stuff. Again, we properly were introduced to our 2 new campmates. So you had Reverend Richard Coles, who I think is some sort of priest, Don't know who he is, don't know where he's from. He's just some priest from somewhere. And then obviously Maura Higgins from Love Island 2000, and the same year as Molly May and Tommy. But yeah, I recognised Maura, her voice, straight away, and I was, as soon as I found out she was announced for the show, I almost wet my pants. I was so excited. But yeah, I think for me, my front runners, I think, are Talisa, Maura and GK. GK is a bit of a screamer, but I think Talisa and Maura are still quite strong, and I think, you know, with that little powerful group of girls in there, they should be able to get quite far. But obviously, let's see what happens. But yeah, Maura and Richard entered the junkyard, which, just by the sound of junkyard, sounds awful. It actually ended up being even more luxurious than main camp. Maura basically said that she liked Richard, but she swears a lot. So obviously, having, you know, being near a priest, she's like, God this, and goodness that, and Jesus Christ this. And obviously she's like, I'm really sorry, priest. I'm really sorry, father. And yeah, they basically found that they ended up having a double bed. They had a sofa, they had bubble baths, they had fruit juices, they had snacks, they had a fire that was kind of already set for them. Not to worry about any of the food, there was always just food. And they were basically on a secret mission to win food for the junkyard buffet, which would obviously include all of the campmates. But in order to do that, they had to go against the campmates and do things that would be a bit mischievous and a bit weird without being caught out, because obviously if they were caught out, that would mean no one wins anything. So yeah, their mission was to win food for the junkyard buffet, and they basically had to make out to the other campmates that they were on rations with no bed, no nothing, no fire, and that would obviously bring them some easy meals for their first little task. Maura said that she's a good liar, and Richard added that he's a fast learner and he thinks he's going to learn fast while being in there with Maura. Maura basically said she felt like she was in a 7-star camp, and they basically had to convince, as their next task, one of the campmates to give up their bed in order for them to win another 3 meals for the junkyard. And as the new campmates, they have to obviously do the cleaning. And there was a letter sent to main camp that obviously the 2 new campmates that were obviously at the junkyard had to earn their place in the main camp by obviously doing their chores. Grace and Colleen went down to quickly go and say hello to the 2 of them, and Grace basically said, oh no, it's not the face of thunder, as obviously looking at Maura, because obviously that's kind of probably what she was used to be described as. Colleen also went down there as well, and obviously they were basically said how bad it was living down there, and you know, they had to do the washing up, and they had nothing, no fire, no water, no nothing. And yeah, Richard and Maura then had to do a task with Melvin, and again they basically said, they were basically sitting on these little podium chairs, and they basically said to Melvin that they were doing a mission in order to, you know, win treats for camp, so they needed to just, yeah, they needed to win as many stars as possible. So they were sitting at the top, and every few minutes they were being given sandwiches with cheese and fruit and all sorts. And what Melvin had to do is get offal from a bucket that was falling on him, slide it down some slide, and then kind of fill up some tub to a level. So what he didn't know is that they were throwing the offal on him, and they were just sitting there eating their sandwiches and eating their fruit and drinking whatever. And obviously, yeah, it was just coming just down as plop. So they weren't even being covered with it. They just kind of were being covered with, you know, free food. So yeah, they basically had to pretend that they were actually involved in this trial to not make it look obvious that they weren't. So Maura just basically said, yeah, scream, cry if you have to. Yeah, they were drinking tea, eating sandwiches. And at the end of it, Maura basically was just like, I'm crying, I can't help it. With Richard basically saying, it's not like it's tea and sandwiches, it's not like, you know, we're just having a lovely day out. He was basically making it kind of quite obvious that that's what they were doing, but obviously to Melvin in that mode, you're like, oh, well, it's not tea and sandwiches, is it? No, it's awful. So, yeah. And, yeah, so obviously Melvin did manage to win that task, which I think won them 10 little cakes. But when Melvin came out of the task, only 5 cakes were there, and he had a little note on the cake box saying, there is contraband in camp, therefore you've lost half of the cakes. And Barry said, all right, well, it's the tea bags, right? So Dean basically said, oh no, the tea bags fell into my backpack, and I happened to just make everyone a cup of tea. And then obviously Talisa also went to the kind of like diary room of I'm a Celebrity, and she basically said that Melvin had given her some seasonings on the first day to kind of make the food a little bit less bland. So both Dean and Talisa owned up to the tea bags and the seasonings, and they managed to obviously dispose of those. Richard and Maura also then wrote a begging letter for the main camp in order for, again, one of them to be given a bed. And Jane said that they all keep thinking about the 2 new campmates and they'd be happy for one of them to get the bed and she'd happily use the mattress. And then Dean said to Jane he's happy to give his bed to her just because obviously he didn't feel like she needed to sleep on the floor. And Maura basically explained that she didn't need to look too happy, she didn't want to look too happy because almost, you know, that kind of give away the fact that they're actually having so much fun. And Richard explained that he didn't realise that being evil would actually be so fun. Dinner for the main camp was wild boar fillet with vegetables, and Talisa basically explained that she was just watching them do the hard work, but she was kind of just telling and guiding them in terms of what they needed to do. Richard and Maura also had wild boar fillet and vegetables. Maura did the prep, Richard did the cooking, and she said that she never saw the day that she'd sleep with the vicar. Her friends wouldn't be too shocked by that. And in terms of the trial, either Dean or Danny, we found out that both of them were going to be doing the trial, and we found out that Richard and Maura would also be on the trial. Didn't really get much more information than that, but we found out that both Richard and Maura would also be on the trial, but in which way, not really 100% sure. So if you did enjoy my review, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. If you are staying on for the weekly review, then I'll be with you and that shortly. But until my next video, thank you for watching and goodbye.